you guys see that? That date is August 22nd, 2022. That means this month in February, if I did my math correctly, it'll be 6 months that I've owned the Leica M10. Since then, I purchased it with the 50mm Summicron. I added the 28mm Summicron, and then 7 Artisans sent me a 35mm f2 that's like a replica of an old 35 Summicron, which actually is a really good lens. Not bad at all. And I want to give my thoughts at 6 months on with this camera, because I'm still as excited and conflicted as I ever was when I first bought it. I was going to break this up into 2 videos, but I don't think it's worth it to kind of just add more content. So if you're interested in the Leica M10 after 6 months, what are my thoughts? This is the video for you. All right, I have owned this thing, like I said, for 6 months, and about a month into owning this, I made a video. If I remember to do it in post, I'll put the link up there. And I talked about what this camera is and what it isn't. And I made some obvious statements, like it's not a sports camera. Obviously, it's not a video camera, it doesn't do that. It's not really meant for, it's meant for very intentional photography. And I knew that. But I've since then gotten better at shooting the camera, and I've realized what it is and what it isn't even more. And there are 2 things specifically, we'll start with the positive, 2 things that make me want to stick with and keep this camera that no other camera I've ever held my entire life, including other Leica cameras, by the way, do. And the first one is its build quality. I've held the Leica Q2, it's very well built. I've owned that Leica SL2S for a little bit. It's also very well built, and they're very nice. I think even those stand alone from other cameras I've held. And I've held other cameras like the Nikon Z9, I've held the Canon R3, play with the Panasonic cameras, name it, like Sony A1, I've held that, the A7R5. And nothing compares to the build quality of a Leica. I'm not going to sit here and wax poetic on it, but I'm just letting you know that uniquely it's different. And if you're into like the way a camera feels in your hands and the way it kind of just the aesthetic it is, this camera is unique in itself. It's totally is, especially when you combine it with the Leica lenses, which are heavy and weighty, and it's just different. And that brings me to my second point of why this Leica M10 is just, I love it so much from this perspective. And that it is the smallest camera, smallest full frame camera that I think you can get. I mean, the Leica Q2 is small, but it's an interchangeable lens. Sony made with the RX1R Mark II, that's a 35mm focal length, but that's not interchangeable lens. This is the smallest full frame interchangeable lens camera there is. Now the Sony A7C is also very small. You can put their small like 2.5 primes on it, but it's just not the same. It's more plasticky. It's not as a premium experience. It does come with a lot more benefits and features in terms of autofocus and video, but it's just not the same. And it's that combination of being able to put an f2, which is faster than Sony lenses, an f2 small prime that's really good optical quality on a full frame camera, so a very, very small package. Now, this isn't a light camera. These are very heavy. They're brass, all metal. They're not light, but very, very small. And those 2 things alone, the build quality and the size that these things are, is unique. You will not find anything else like it in an interchangeable lens full frame camera. It's nothing even close. And to me, it makes you really want to keep it. There are other things. The image quality, the lenses are really good, so there's that. But those 2 things alone are uniquely suited to like why you should own a Leica M10. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And there's a couple things, couple prevailing thoughts I need to talk about as to why this camera just doesn't make any sense. And hopefully this helps you as a potential Leica M buyer. So let's talk about what doesn't work. All right, so what doesn't work about this camera? Well, there's a couple things. For most people, this won't work because it's so manual. For somebody like myself, it's very, very niche into what I do. It's meant for very intentional photography. I can do landscape with it. Well, you can do any type of landscape or any kind of photography with it, but it's not really good at anything. It's really meant to be, I think, a street photographer's camera where you zone focus, shoot on like a 28 or 35mm, set it at f8, know your zone focusing, and go for it. You can use it for portraits, of course. You can document your kids. But in portraits, if you move just the slightest bit, if you want to shoot the shallow depth of field, you're going to be out of focus. That's going to be frustrating. If you want to track your kids, well, they move a lot. So it's hard to catch them, especially with critical focus. A Sony, Canon, Nikon, Fuji, all would be better at that, for sure. You want to shoot sports, obviously it's not a sports camera. I'm not saying that it is. And so my point is, though, the reason why I tell you all this, some things are obvious, is very rarely do I grab this camera and say it's the best tool that I own for the job. I won a trip for my work. I ended up finishing well this year in sales again, which is great. And I'm going to be going to Nevis. If you guys look on the map, St. Kitts and Nevis in April. And I was thinking about, hey, what camera do I want to bring? Now, I want to bring the Leica with the 50 and the 28, maybe even the 35, because it's almost like Micro Four Thirds. The cameras are so small and the lenses are so small. Why wouldn't you? But there's a couple things that have me concerned. One, these, again, bodies aren't weather sealed. So I'll be by the water and the ocean and the beach and getting sand and whatever on a Leica M. I don't know. They're not guaranteed to be weather sealed. I don't think they have a reputation necessarily for being weather sealed, and I don't want to find out and have to repair it, because that's another part that's a negative. It's expensive. Also, there's a lot of times where I want to shoot video, where I'm going to want to put video on top of photos and maybe record a video while I'm out there for this channel or just for memories that I save. Well, that means I've either got to shoot it on my iPhone or a GoPro or carry two cameras around like the one I'm shooting this video on right now. And that's not ideal either. I don't want to do that. Sometimes things move quick. Again, you got the focusing, you got to set your aperture to something a little deeper depth of field, and you get a zone focus. It's just, if you look, this camera I'm shooting this video on, it makes a lot more sense to bring this camera as my tool of choice for Nevis. Also, if I want to shoot longer lenses, this doesn't do that. I can't shoot 500 millimeters, 600 millimeters. I'm out on a boat taking some kind of a tour. It's not good for that. If I want to put one lens on, like a zoom lens, where I can go wide to tight, well, you can't put zoom lenses on a Leica M. Besides, I think they had one lens that was like a multiple, like 3 primes in one. But besides that, like a Tri-Elmar or something. But besides that, you can't do that. And that's my point, is that when you really start thinking about what's the best tool for the job, rarely is it this camera. But it's this camera is the one you want to bring. And that's frustrating, because when you spend between the 2 lenses, 3 lenses I have, and this body a significant amount of money, you're like, why do I have this? Why do I have this camera? And so that's kind of where I'm at after 6 months of owning the M10. Many times I thought about selling this and trading for a Q2 to still have like that Leica glass, small full frame, whatever. But then you're stuck to 28. And people say you can crop and do 35, 50, 75. It's not the same. It's just not the same. It's an option, but it's not the best option. It's also not the unique rangefinder experience that you get with this, which just reminds me, minimum focusing distance sucks on all these lenses. Like I just tried to focus on there. It's not good. Stuff like that. So it's an emotional absolute yes. I love everything about it. And it's never the perfect tool for the job outside of street photography. I mean, even that, the sensor blows highlights easy, so you have to underexpose quite a bit. There's many times where I do like the old focus recompose, but I do it with metering. So I'll set the camera up where I leave it on ISO A, right here, and I will focus off the dark part, take the picture, review. Oh, it's overexposed. Then meter off the bright part, and then take the picture, and it gets it right. So there's that. Oh, and last but not least, the straight out of camera JPEGs on these are not good either. This is an editing camera. I think you can do black and whites okay, but yeah, it's not a good JPEG camera. So that's my thoughts. And I've thought about putting this up for sale a bunch of times, and I've also said, no, you need to keep this because of all the reasons I mentioned. I'll regret it the minute I sell it. I don't know, if you're considering a Leica camera, like an M10, M11, M whatever, M240, or if you own an M, tell me your thoughts. What do you think? I would ideally love to make this my only camera. I think it'd be super cool. But the reality is I have too many other things I do. I mean, I need to shoot a job. I'm shooting a paid gig here in a week. It won't be with this. My customer's not going to pay me to shoot out of focus pictures or to miss the moment. I need to be quick. And so it's a passion camera. That's it. By the way, I didn't think this would bother me. This is the 50 version 5 Summicron. There's no focus tab on this at all. When you shoot a lens with the focus tab, like the 28 Cron, you miss the focus tab big time. If somebody knows how to add a focus tab to this lens, please let me know. I'd greatly appreciate that. Okay, that's it. More videos coming for you. I submitted my black and white photography for this week's 52 frames contest. In fact, the one I submitted was off of the Leica M10 with this 50. I'll put a couple photos up right now. In fact, let's talk about it real quick. Here's one photo I took on the camera recording you on, which is just in snow, trying to go for black and white contrasty stuff. It's okay, but kind of boring. Second one was I took the camera recording you on skiing, and I got my daughter. I just think it's a cool picture. But the one I ultimately ended up submitting was my littlest daughter. Again, that's straight out of camera, and the reason why I like it is because it's the way she's looking at me, but I use my body to block the reflection on the window, and it just kind of creates, to me, it visually focuses you in on my daughter's face, but then you realize like it's in the shadow of me, her dad, taking her picture, and I like what that means to me. It's a very sentimental picture. I like what that means, but it's out of focus. If you zoom in, it's not sharp on her face. It's just off. It's just off. Which I think it still conveys the message, doesn't matter, but it is off. Okay, if you listened to this whole video, thank you so much. Share your thoughts on Leica cameras, M bodies specifically. What do you think?